All right. All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Tyson, and today we are going to do the webinar training on the on the flow monitor. And we're also going to do, well, we're going to start on the flow monitor, then we might get into some reporting later on. But basically what the flow monitor is a tool that you can use within Management Plus to assist with your schedule. So the flow monitor allows you to put patients into this to this tool and basically just move them along. So that way you're keeping track of where they are during their visit. So you would create different stations which we'll look at, or different rooms, I guess. And so you would have a waiting room and then an exam room 1, exam room 2, or any other rooms that you have in your office where a patient might be. And you would just move the patient from one room to the other until eventually they're done. And that just helps you keep track of where they are. It also shows you how long they've been in that room. And so this is beneficial. By no means is it required. Not all of our clients use this tool, but those that do use it, they do like it. So I'll show you how to set it up and some of the functions. And then it's up to you whether you'd like to implement that into your process with your scheduling or I guess it wouldn't be the scheduling; it'd be more so once they're in office, but through that process. Okay, so I'm showing my screen right now. You should see my Management Plus online training. Okay, so let me show you real quick first. Let's jump into our schedule. So you should be familiar with this now, with our scheduler. I've got 2 open, so I've got one for Dr. Thornton, I've got a different one for Dr. Smith. Just showing today's schedule. So basically what happens is a patient will show up, and I've got 2 appointments, one right now for Leonardo DiCaprio. We're happy to have him at our office here, but so at 9 o'clock, and right now it's 9:07 our time. So normally what I would do is I'd right click, and depending on what you do at your office, you could do the checked in here, and that's our recommendations, to create dispositions for checked in and checked out. And actually I think they might already be defaulted in the system. Or what you could do is you could create a disposition called waiting room. I've seen that as well, meaning that they're here and they're in the waiting room. So the dispositions, they are customizable. You can select different ones and create those if you like. Let me show you real quick, just a refresher. To do that, we go down to our File, Template Scheduling, Scheduling Setup, and then Dispositions. So this is the table of dispositions. And again, this is going to already have some options in there, but you can click on the Add and add a new one. So like I was saying, if I wanted to add waiting room in here, I would just add the description. Now, you have a few options to indicate what type of appointment this is, and that's going to be tied to an action. So when you change the appointment to the waiting room disposition, is that a scheduled, a rescheduled, canceled, completed, or in process? So it's going to mean in process. And then I can select a color, a disposition color. So let's do purple. But the disposition color is tied to the disposition bar on your schedule. Do OK there. So you can do some of these other ones. This is by default. You can't change this, but this is a canceled appointment, with a red disposition. You've got scheduled, which is going to be blue, and it's scheduled, and so forth. So, okay, so that's just a quick refresher on dispositions. Let me go back to our schedule. Okay, so when Leonardo or our patient is here, we would go to disposition, and then actually let me refresh it so it shows the one that I just added. Okay, so when I go to our disposition now, I've got waiting room if I wanted to just change that disposition to waiting room, or I could do checked in. So what the flow monitor does is it works with your scheduler. So based on the disposition that you set here, it then knows, okay, this patient is in the office. I'm going to put them into the flow monitor so you can start tracking and managing where that patient is during their visit. So we do have to tell the system to do that. So I'm going to close out of our schedule. I'm going to go to File, Administration, and then System Property. Okay, within the System Properties, it should default to it, but the first tab we have here is our scheduling. There are some options in here that we can turn on that are applicable to our scheduler. We talked about some of the custom fields up here, which is tied to the scheduling appointment and being able to select the appointment reason. And you can get more specific and have a short and long reason in there instead of just appointment reason if you wanted to. But some of these other options we talked about just a little bit, having the waiting list or recall capture turned on. We talked about this during our scheduling training. But for today, with the flow monitor, all I want to show you is these right here, these two options for the patient kiosk. So when we click this on to check in and out from scheduling, that's going to be tied to the flow monitor. So we want to check this, and then we want to set the disposition. So as I mentioned before, when we change the disposition on the scheduler, that's going to notify the flow monitor to put that patient into the first station there. And so what we want to do is we want to tell the system what disposition to look for. So in this case, I'm going to say, well, let's just make it simple. Let's just do check-in, and then this will be when they're checking out. So when they're done, what's the disposition? It's going to be checked out. Or you could do completed in here. Can't remember if we have that or not. No, we don't. So I also have seen disposition created for completed, but check in, check out works fine. Okay, and that's all you need to do for right now with some of the setup is just create those disposition markers and then make sure that this is checked. Okay, I'm going to click OK. All right, now what we want to do is build our flow monitor. So if I go up to File, Patient Flow, and then Flow Monitor, this is what it looks like. So it's pretty simple, and it's just blank right now. But all we need to do is just start adding our stations, and we'll need to create those as we go. But what you're going to do is you're going to right-click in this big blank area underneath this top section. There's just this big blank area. We're going to right-click in there. We've got a few options: add station, add all stations, show station name, which I'll talk about in a minute. But first, what we want to do is add station. Now that's going to pull up our station list. And if it's easier, we can definitely do this. So instead of opening up your flow monitor, if you want to go to File, Patient Flow Setup, and then Stations, it'll pull up the same table. So you can just work on creating all of those different stations. But this is going to be every room where the patient could possibly be during his or her visit. So I just have a few added here: waiting room, lab, exam room, I'll add another one. Let's just say exam 2. And let's add one more. Let's do check down. And you can add a description. It's not required, but you can say specifically what that's for. Okay, so I have some stations created from my flow monitor. I'm going to go back to the flow monitor. I think I closed it. Yep. Okay, let's try this again here. Okay, so now we're going to add some stations to our flow monitor. And let me show you what this looks like. So we could right-click, do Add Station. And what we'll want to do is we'll actually want to work backwards. So I'll want to put in the very last station first. And then, like I said, yeah, work backwards. So checked out, that's going to be the very last station. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to right-click and add a station again. Let's do exam room 2. Add station, exam room 1. Add station, waiting room. Okay, so so this is what it looks like. So you just have, again, it's fairly basic, but you just have your different stations or different rooms added into your flow monitor now. And so we've got 4 stations. You can add quite a bit of stations in here. But once you have some stations added, let me just show you what the function looks like. So now we're going to pull up our scheduler. Now you'll notice since we turned on that option in the system properties to check in and check out from scheduler, this little pop-up is going to show. And what it says is that it says patient check-in kiosk configuration, check-in station for this kiosk, and then ask what station. So you do have to, this has to be done for each staff member. So whenever they open up their scheduler, or the next time they open up their scheduler after you turn on that option in system properties, they'll have to select the station in your flow monitor that's tied to the checked-in disposition. And they only have to do it once, and the system will remember it. But they do have to do it. If they just close it, then the flow monitor is not going to work. Or if they click cancel, the flow monitor is not going to work. They do have to set this station in order for the flow monitor to work properly. And again, what they're doing is they're coming in here and they're saying, okay, for my checked-in, when I do a checked-in status or disposition, I'm going to want the patients to show up in the flow monitor in the waiting room. So you're selecting which station to first put them into once a patient is checked in. And that's going to be my waiting room. Because if we go back to my flow monitor, my first station is the waiting room. So that's what I'm going to want to select here. Okay, so I'm going to click OK on that. All right, and you can have both up. You notice at the bottom in my taskbar, I've just got the flow monitor and the scheduler both open at the same time. So the flow monitor does automatically update just like your scheduler does. You know, again, we talked about that where you do have to turn on the automatic refresh through your scheduler, but the flow monitor will just automatically do that for you. You don't have to turn anything on. Okay, so Leonardo DiCaprio is here in the office. I'm going to right-click. I'm going to do disposition. I'm going to check him in. Okay, now you notice the disposition is changed from blue, which is scheduled, to green, which means that they're in the office and they have that checked-in status. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take a look at my flow monitor. You'll notice that since I told the scheduler for all checked-in patients, go ahead and put them in the waiting room on the flow monitor, now it's done that. And then in my system properties, I told the system to look for the checked-in disposition in order to put them into the flow monitor. So those two things are vital in order for the flow monitor to work properly. It's going to be that system properties options we talked about, as well as selecting the right station on the scheduler. Now, if you select the wrong one or it's not popping up, you can come up into the scheduler and do set initial check-in station up here in the menu, and that'll pull up that same window. And if you have selected something, it'll show that there. If it is blank, you want to make sure that you select the appropriate station or room in there. Okay, so now I have someone in my flow monitor. Let me make that a little bit bigger. Okay, so what you do is you basically just will take them from, you left click on them and you can just drag them to the different room once they've moved. So usually you have the flow monitor open with Management Plus in some of the exam rooms, and the technicians, even though they're not looking at the scheduler necessarily, they'll still have the flow monitor open, and they'll just make sure that they are moving those patients as they move through their visit. Okay, so once we kind of make it through our visit here, let me show you, well, before we do that, let me back up actually. Let me come back to our waiting room. Okay, so on here we've got the appointment, and let's do a couple. Go back to our schedule. Let's check in Marguerite, and then let's check in Dwight Schrute. Okay, so I've got 3 people now on my schedule. So all right, so with the flow monitor, as I mentioned, you've got the appointment time here, and then you've got the information of the appointment, so the patient, the procedure, and then you have the time. So there's 2 times there. The top time should be the time since their scheduled visit. Oh, I'm sorry, not since their scheduled visit, since they've been in the flow monitor. And then the one below that is going to be since their scheduled visit. So I don't know why it's saying the 58 minutes there on top. They obviously haven't been in here for an hour. Don't know if it's something that has to do with my configuration here with Windows. But that's normally what it should show. And then 23 minutes. So, you know, right now it's the 9:24. The appointment was scheduled at 9, so it's been 24 minutes since their scheduled appointment. And that's how it is. So this was 9:15, 9 minutes since their scheduled appointment. So every time that you actually move this patient, the system starts recording how long the patients are in here, and it will, you can run a report against that, and you can take a look and see how long patients are staying in each room. Yeah, so it's kind of a nice feature there. So let's just run through this. If I go all the way to the end and they're in our checkout station, if I right-click, I can just check them out from here. and then that will remove them from the flow monitor. And then if I go back to my scheduler, so that was Dwight Schrute. So now Dwight Schrute, well, let's refresh this real quick. Dwight Schrute has a disposition of checked out. So when I checked him out from the flow monitor, it automatically checked him out on the scheduler as well. If I probably would have waited another few seconds, this would have refreshed and that would have seen it. But I just manually refreshed it by clicking on that button there. So that's what the flow monitor does, and like I said, it works with the scheduler. And you have a couple other options that you can do. If you right-click on the patient within the flow monitor, we already looked at the checked out. If you didn't check them in through the scheduler and you pull them in manually into here, which we can do, I'll show you, but you can check them in here and change the disposition. If you don't know where the patient is in your flow monitor, you can click on Find Patient, look for Leonardo DiCaprio, and it says patient is at station waiting room, and then I can look for them there. Okay, and then we can move a patient here. So if you want to pull a patient into a station, so let's say I didn't want to check them in and I just wanted to manually pull them into the flow monitor and then check them in, I could do that. I could pull in Tom Cruise. Oh, I'm sorry, let's see. So I guess what we need to do here is if you already have a patient that's listed and you don't know where they are in the stations, then you'd right-click and you can move them here. So if I wanted to move Marguerite, then I would do that. Just a quick way, instead of left-clicking and dragging over to the stations, then I would do that. So then we've got that Move Patient To option I was just looking at, and you select a certain station there that you could put that patient into. Okay, and then we have the same functions that we have within the scheduler to where you can open up the patient account, patient demographics from the flow monitor. I could open up just their appointment list. And look at their appointment history. I could add a recall if I wanted through the flow monitor. And then I could look at some of their EHR. So I could open up a new EHR visit for those technicians or doctors that have this open in the exam rooms. Or I can open up their current EHR visit or narrative, or print their EHR narrative from this right-click menu. Again, you have the same options on the scheduler when you right-click. You have those same EHR as well as patient appointments or patients. You have those options there as well. Okay, then I can remove a station, or I can do a manual refresh if I wanted to. Okay, so other thing I want to show you on here, we talked about once they're done, we can just check them out. Let me check her, Marguerite, let me just check, put her in checkout. Patient's been checked out. I'm going to confirm it on my scheduler. Great. So it has a red disposition bar, which means they're checked out. Okay, so what you'll want to do, though, is once you have a good layout here, when you're first creating your flow monitor, you do want to save it. And to do that, we're going to go up to this first section up here, so above where your stations go, and you're going to right-click up there, and you have a few different options. One is load layout. The other is save layout. So when you're first creating that, this is what you'll want to do. You want to do save layout. It's going to ask you where to put it. You'll want to put it on a shared drive, so someplace where all of your staff members can access it, or at least those staff members that will be using the flow monitor. You want to put it on one of those drives. So if I were to do Okay, and I've saved that. So now that's saved to my desktop. Just stayed right here. It's a .flow file, so you're not able to open that up anywhere except for Management Plus. But when your staff members first open up the flow monitor, it's going to be blank, and they don't have to add all the stations again manually. They would just go ahead and right-click and do Load Layout, and then they will go out to that shared drive, look for the flow that you had created, and then just either double-click on or click Open. Okay. Other options that we have in here, well, you actually wouldn't really use them. So you can rearrange these. So by default, they're just going to be large columns. If you wanted to, you could left-click on the title of the station and then just drag it, and you see how it has an outline of the box. Once it matches up with an area, or basically connects into a certain area on the flow monitor, you'll see it size itself like it did right there. Or if I go down here, I can have it go all the way across like that, or I can just push it down at the bottom. Once it's down, I can resize it by going to the top of that header and left-clicking and just dragging it, and I can resize it that way if I wanted to. So if you wanted to have them on top of each other, you could. You know, for some of your exam rooms that aren't used very often, but you still want to have everything on there, you can do it that way. If you do just leave it in this area without having it connected into a specific spot, then it's just going to be a floating station. So you want to make sure that you do have it connect into an actual area like that. Or else it's just going to be floating, and then that'll kind of be a headache for you. So, okay, if you have multiple physicians, we do have this physician filter at the top. I can choose just to see, you know, Dr. Smith, and I don't have any patients for Dr. Smith in here. So I can remove that if I wanted to, or you can add, or you can just click on these down here, these little X's, if you wanted to get rid of the filter on just a few stations. You could do that. So just on our waiting room and checkout, I want to see all patients, but let me make this a little bit nicer. Okay. So, and I could do that. I could just get rid of the physician filter on different stations and still have them apply to other ones. So if you wanted to do that, you could. Okay. And that's really about it for the flow monitor. Let me make sure I didn't forget anything. So I just cleared all my stations with that clear all. I don't want to do that. Let's go back to flow monitor. When it's not maximized, you do have that Find Patient button. So same thing as right-clicking and going to Find Patient. You can just click on Find Patient and do it that way as well. Pretty simple. This graph up here, it's color-coded. You can see that there's different colors tied to each station that's created. It's not functional right now, so you're not going to actually see this work really well. It looks like it is changing colors, but for the most part, I wouldn't depend on that too heavily with seeing how many patients are in a certain station as part of a pie chart there. So, all right, so that's our flow monitor. If you have any questions or have any problems with that when you're setting that up, just let your trainer know or contact our support, and we can go over that with you.